My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training, which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks, but then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it, but my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2. My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing, as if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. He even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. And I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours, and they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day in their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. That he tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage, but I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them. Bye!
Story time about how my whole class found my teacher's OF. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 10th grade, and my best friend Maya and I were walking in the hallway getting ready for first period. Now, even this early in the morning, the rumor was already going around that Miss J had an OF. Fast forward, Maya and I get to first period. 10 minutes after class started, Miss J put a problem up on the board. After she gave us a little bit of time, she was like, okay, who can solve this? And as she's about to call on someone, there was this guy, Jake, in my class, who was passing notes to this one girl, Jessica. And if you're wondering why they were passing notes, it's because we were not allowed to have phones in this class, of course. Anyway, so then Miss J is like, can you read that to the class, blah, 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 blah. And the note literally said, did you hear about Miss J's OF? She finished teaching the rest of our class, but we didn't see her for like 3 days after that. And I guess she wasn't fired because she had an OF. It was because there were students subscribed to it. And she knew about those students that were subscribed to it and she didn't do anything about it. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town. And that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early. And he went to this meeting and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house. Because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way.
My boyfriend proposed and now I don't want to marry him anymore. I know this might seem stupid and ungrateful, but honestly, I'm too upset to even care. 2 days ago, my boyfriend proposed to me at a McDonald's near our house. He got on his knees in the middle of us eating and asked if I wanted to marry him with a silver ring. Some people were looking at me with happy faces and others with looks of pity and disgust. That's how I felt in the moment. I didn't say anything. I literally just sobbed and nodded my head because I didn't want to embarrass him. The reason I'm mad over his way of proposal was because 1, we don't talk about proposing every day, but we probably talk about it at least twice a month, with him usually bringing it up. I told him I wanted my mom, sister, and dad to be there if it was possible and for it to be in a romantic setting. 2, I hate silver jewelry. I'm a gold girl and he knows it. I told him I would never want any silver ring, and if he does buy me any jewelry, it's gold. I feel like if you're asking somebody to spend their life with you, then it should be more thought out and planned. I don't think this is the type of person I want to marry, but I don't know. I've been trying to convince myself since yesterday that maybe I hyped up the proposal in my head too much, that whatever he did wouldn't have topped it off. I think anything but that would have been better. This sounds like a man who wants to break up but doesn't want to be the bad guy. I'm not joking or being sarcastic. And then somebody else said, that was my first thought. It reminds me of a post a few months back of somebody's boyfriend proposing with a lackluster ring, and she said yes and spent a while thinking about what it meant. It was later revealed that he expected her to break up with him over it so he could leave the relationship while making her look like a superficial bitch.
Oh, wow.
But got sick of her waiting to bring up her disappointment to him, so he just confessed it to her. Dang. This post gives the same energy. If I ever end up actually marrying anybody, I won't think twice about how he proposed or the ring he got because he will have listened to me or he knows me well enough to do something meaningful for me. If I'm second guessing any of this, then I trust that I wouldn't marry someone who didn't make me feel like I am 100% valued, loved, and respected. Am I the asshole for not allowing my parents to sleep in the same bed? I think you know where this is going.
I think so.
But there's no definitive answer on who's in the wrong. Also, for simplicity's sake, I'll be saying parents, but it is my mother and stepfather. My mother and stepdad have been together since I was little. So I'm a 25-year-old woman with 2 older siblings, both male. When we were growing up, we were never allowed girlfriends or boyfriends to stay the night, which I felt was fair enough. When my boyfriends got to be about 16, however, their girlfriends were allowed to spend the night, but they had to sleep in the spare room. Again, fair. That makes sense to me. I've always been somewhat of a tomboy, so as you can imagine, teen boys didn't show very much interest in me romantically, so I didn't get my first boyfriend until I was already 18. My parents wouldn't allow me to spend the night at all, despite us both being 18. I wouldn't have minded if my brothers had been held to the same standard, but it felt as if they were being favored over me. It isn't even because they disliked my boyfriend at the time. Everyone seemed to love him. That relationship didn't last more than 6 months, so I dropped it after a while. I got with my now fiancé when I was 22, and we've been engaged for a year. We're getting married in only a few months. Still, just like every time before, my parents wouldn't allow him to spend the nights until a few months after we got engaged, after I brought it up to them. It wasn't a conflict, but they knew I was irritated and allowed him to start using the spare room. We moved in together not long after that, so it didn't really matter. Now, I may be the asshole. My mom asked me about wedding planning the first time she even contacted me since the move, and I told her that I still had a lot to sort out, but I was getting through it, but she practically insisted on coming up to me and having a week of mother-daughter bonding time, where she could help me with wedding planning. My fiancé isn't a very social person and is happy to be the money bags behind my wedding decisions here. He just gives me his opinions, and I'm sure to include them when he does. Parents arrived, and we spent the first day going out to dinner. I'd like to point out that the two aren't married and are steadfast that they won't ever get married again. Both of them are divorced already. My stepdad twice, so as the night was slowing down, they asked me to be shown to their room. I directed my mother to one guest bedroom and my stepfather to another. We have a 3-bedroom with no kids yet, so we have the space. My mom said that there was plenty of room in one for them both and instructed my stepdad to come in with her. I explained, just like she told me, that it was my house and I didn't want them sharing a bed in my house. I basically repeated word for word what she would tell me when I would complain about my brothers getting better treatment than me when it came to their partner. I told her that actually, they were in the same position I was in because neither of them were married. She tried saying it was different because they had been together for almost 20 plus years. I told them that it didn't matter because this is my house and my decision is final. Just like how my mom would shut down any discussions about it back then. I was sure to mention how my brothers were allowed their partners and I wasn't, but she claimed that I was making it up. They stayed the night and left for home the next day, which I preferred because I was happy wedding planning on my own. I haven't heard from them since. My grandmother has called to tell me off for it though, so I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for leaving in the middle of a date? I, 33 male, went on a date last night with a gal I had previously...
Oh,
yeah.
no.
I had briefly been talking to. She was late for the date, which is fine. Shit happens.
No, it's not.
I asked her if everything was okay, and she replied that she just finished up filming, and that's why she was late. I asked her what sort of filming she does, because I love films.
I bet you like this film,
Have you seen every part? Oh, I love it.
Harry Potter, the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Ravenclaw.
She gave
That's
me
what you tell her. You're like, Ravenclaw. She's like, what? Ravenclaw. You're like,
Homies fly upside down. Fly
so
upside
from a
down.
random movie, you just say, like, I just said I was filming. You're like, Ravenclaw.
Are you repping Harry Potter?
Yeah, what is that?
That's a separate Ravenclaw.
She gave me this obnoxious giggle and told me to subscribe to her OnlyFans.
Yes!
I was a bit appalled. She went on to tell me how it was a MMF video, male, male, female, and then proceeded to start asking my monthly income. I excused myself to the bathroom, paid the tab for what was ordered, and told them everything else she ordered is on her dime. Then I left. She messaged me later freaking out about leaving and how she really likes me. I just blocked her number. I don't feel like I need to explain myself. It was a first date, I'm not into that, and she can obviously get someone else.